It's finally time to start this project. I've had this idea in the back of my mind for a long time, but with busy family, work, moving, and everything else going on, it has remained just a thought until now. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, but my favorite Tolkien work is actually The Hobbit. In my mind, and in my opinion, it is one of the best books of fiction ever written. The story is just amazing, and I could go on for a long time talking about it. But for now, I want to key in on just one scene, one of the moments in this book, the riddles in the dark. Okay, so the scene that I want to create a diorama of is when Gollum and Bilbo meet for the first time. So I've got Gollum and Bilbo, and let's take a look at what I'm going to try to do here. So what I got here is something that I'm going to try to fit into my shelf, and I want to have a bottom, two sides, and I want to have a top as well. Now, I know most dioramas don't have tops to them, but what I want to do is create stalactites that hang down, and the only way that I can see about doing that is having a top. So please bear with me as I use my very limited drawing skills to try to show you what I want to do here. So I'm going to use this basic box shape with the dimensions that fit on my shelf. I mean, it could also be considered a large book nook, but it's probably going to be about a foot wide and about 13 inches tall, so it fits in my shelf. So it's going to be a really big book nook. But I want to have the edge of the underground lake somewhere here, and I'm going to have some rock outcroppings. I want to have some stalactites that come down. And somewhere, Bilbo and Gollum are going to be in there. Now, I also want to create Gollum's boat, and I don't have one. I have a 3D printed Gollum, but what I want to do for his boat is I'm going to attempt to sculpt it out of green stuff. So that's going to be a bit of a new adventure for me. I've done a little bit of playing around with that stuff in, fixing up miniatures and adding little things to miniatures, but I've never sculpted something entirely out of green stuff. So I figured a boat, pretty simple thing, is a good way to start. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this base structure out of wood, and then we'll get back to the table, and I'm just going to build it in as I see fit. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like now, but let's check it out as we go, all right?
Bless us and splash us, my precious. I guess it's a choice feast, at least a tiny morsel it make us Gollum.
And when he said Gollum, he'd make a horrible swallowing noise in his throat. That's how he got his name, though he always called himself my precious. The Hobbit jumped nearly out of his skin when the hiss came in his ears, and suddenly he saw the pale eyes sticking out at him. "Who are you?" he asked, thrusting his dagger in front of him.
What is he, my precious?
Whispered Gollum, who always spoke to himself through never having anyone else to speak to. This is what he'd come to find out, for he was not really very hungry at the moment, only curious. Otherwise he would have grabbed first and whispered afterwards. "I am Mr. Bilbo Baggins. I have lost the dwarves, and I have lost the wizard, and I don't know where I am, and I don't want to know. If only I can get away."
What has he got in his handsies?
Said Gollum, looking toward the sword, which he did not quite like. "A sword blade which came out of Gondolin," said Gollum, and he became very polite.
Perhaps he sits and chats with it a bitsy, my precious. It likes riddles, perhaps it does it?
He was anxious to appear friendly, at any rate for the moment, and until he had found out more about the sword and the Hobbit, whether he really was quite alone, really, whether he was good to eat, and whether Gollum was really hungry. Riddles were all he could think of. Asking them, and sometimes guessing them, had been the only game he had ever played with the other funny creatures sitting in their holes in the long, long ago, before he lost all his friends and was driven away, alone, and crept down, down, into the dark under the mountains. "Very well," said Bilbo, who was anxious to agree, until he found out more about the creature, whether he was quite alone, whether he was fierce or hungry, and whether he was a friend of the goblins. "You ask first," he said, because he had not had time to think of a riddle. So Gollum hissed,
What has roots as nobody sees is taller than the trees. Up, up it goes, and yet never grows.
"Easy," said Bilbo. "Mountains, I suppose."
Does it guess easy? It must have a competition with us, my precious. If Precious asks and it doesn't answer, we eat it, my precious. If it asks and we don't answer, then we does what it wants, eh? We shows it the way out, yes.
Okay, so we've got it mostly how we want it now. Base shape. We've got the box made. Got all the main styrofoam bits in there. And so far, I think it's looking pretty good. So at the bottom here, I tried melting out the lake. So I want the lake to be kind of seeming like it would go off in this direction, you know, and get bigger. So it's kind of tapering out towards the outside. And then I want this to kind of be like a sandy little, almost like a beach of sorts for the lake. And I'm going to have Bilbo standing here, and then I'm going to have Gollum up on this rock here. And then the whole thing now, the next step is to coat it in, basically I'm using plaster of Paris and insulation. So poor man's Sculptamold. I'm going to coat the whole thing, all the styrofoam is going to get covered. And then we can really start to shape things out, level things out where we need to. I'm not sure what I'm going to use for the water yet. I'm thinking just a bit of 2-part epoxy. I'm not going to make it very deep because it's supposed to be dark. And then we'll start to fill in some things and details, and it should be a lot of fun. It's looking good already. I'm excited. It was in my mind, and now it's coming together like I thought it would. So I'm excited. Alright, so I started on the top, so this is upside down, but I've got, basically it's a mixture of blow-in insulation and plaster of Paris, and so I've got that all done on the top now, and now I'm going to start working on the sides and work my way down to the bottom, just filling the cracks in so it looks more natural, and looks like stone, and then I'm going to cover the whole thing in Mod Podge with some black paint in it, and then we'll get on to the fun stuff. All right, that is where I'm going to leave you guys for the moment. I'm sorry I couldn't finish it all in one day, but it's a bigger build than I thought it would be. It's taking a little bit longer, even though I thought it would take a while, it's taking a bit longer than what I thought. I'm just waiting on my lake to dry. So make sure you subscribe so you can see when the second episode comes out, because I'm going to release it as soon as it's done. And it is almost done already. I was going to put it all in one episode, but it's just too long and too big. So stay tuned so you can see as soon as it comes out. And thank you so much for watching. Please comment below. What kind of projects are you guys working on? And what do you like about what I'm doing? And what would you do differently? Do you guys have any hints or tips of how I could do things differently? I'm definitely trying a few new techniques on this one, so I'd appreciate any feedback. Thanks for watching as always.